It's hard to truly picture what over a billion people actually looks like. Imagine every seat in every stadium on Earth filled up and then multiplied several hundred times. That's how many people live in China. As of 2023, China remains the most populous country in the world with over 1.4 billion people. India is right behind, and in fact some projections say it may already be ahead in certain estimates. But on official records, China still holds the top spot. What's even more fascinating is that this isn't a recent trend. China has been leading the world in population for thousands of years. But why is that? How did this one country grow to be home to so many people? In today's video, we're counting down the 10 biggest reasons why China became and still is the most populous country in the world. Let's get started from number 10 to number 1. Number 10. Fertile land and big rivers. Fertile land and big rivers. China's geography has played a huge role in its population growth. The eastern part of the country, especially along the Yangtze and Yellow rivers, is packed with fertile land. These rivers have supported farming for thousands of years. When people have access to good land and fresh water, food becomes more available. And when food is stable, more people can survive and thrive. Throughout history, the regions near these rivers became the centers of Chinese civilization. With fertile fields, families could grow rice, wheat, and other crops to feed not just themselves, but entire communities. The ability to produce so much food early on allowed villages to turn into towns and towns to become cities. Number 9. Early agricultural development. While many parts of the world were still living as hunters and gatherers, ancient China was already practicing advanced farming. The Chinese were among the first to develop large-scale agriculture. As early as 7000 BCE, people in the region were growing millet. Later, rice farming spread in the south. Making use of the warm and wet climate. Agriculture meant people didn't need to move around to find food anymore. They could settle in one place, raise families, and create communities. Stable food production meant lower infant mortality and higher life expectancy even in ancient times. That led to consistent population growth, century after century. Number 8. A long and stable civilization. China has one of the oldest continuous civilizations in the world. Over 3,000 years of relatively stable rule under various dynasties helped keep the country unified and productive. Even though there were periods of war and division, most dynasties encouraged agriculture, expanded infrastructure, and supported population growth. Because of this long, relatively stable history, China had more time than most countries to grow. In numbers. By the time other nations were still forming basic governments, China had already been managing large populations, building canals and running organized systems of agriculture and trade. Number 7. Cultural emphasis on family and children. In traditional Chinese culture, the family has always been at the center of society. Having many children was considered a blessing, both spiritually and practically. Children were expected to support their parents in old age, making large families, a kind of long-term security. This belief was especially strong in rural areas, where more children meant more help with farming and household work. Sons were particularly valued as they carried on the family name and were expected to provide financial support. This preference led many families to keep having children until they had a boy. Even when times were tough or resources were limited, the cultural importance of having children remained strong. This mindset helped drive population growth for generations, especially before government birth control policies were introduced. The emphasis on family and the belief in strength through numbers made childbearing more than a personal choice. It was a duty and tradition. Number 6. Historical government support for growth. In several periods of Chinese history, emperors actively encouraged population growth. Some dynasties gave rewards to families with many children. Others lowered taxes for large households. During the Qing dynasty, for example, rulers saw population growth as a sign of national strength. Even in the early years of the People's Republic of China, after 1949, the government initially promoted having more children. Chairman Mao famously said that a large population was a source of power, and families were encouraged to grow as much as possible to build a strong nation. Number 5. Medical improvements in the 20th century. During the 20th century, especially after 1949, China made major improvements in healthcare. Vaccination campaigns, better hygiene, and improved hospital access all helped reduce infant mortality and increase life expectancy. More children were surviving childbirth and more adults were living longer. Before modern medicine, diseases and infections would often wipe out large portions of the population. But with better healthcare, the death rate dropped significantly, while the birth rate remained high for many years. This led to a population boom, especially during the 1950s and 1960s. Number 4. Medical improvements in the 20th century. Between 1949 and the late 1970s, China experienced one of the fastest population growth periods in human history. Families were having more children than ever, and the healthcare system was keeping most of them alive. At one point, the population was increasing by more than 20 million people per year. This explosive growth created pressure on resources, jobs, and housing. Eventually, the government stepped in to slow it down. But by the time the one-child policy was introduced in 1979, China had already crossed 900 million people. Number 3. Slow population control policies in rural areas. Even after the one-child policy was introduced, not everyone in China was strictly limited to having just one child. In rural areas, many families were allowed to have 2 children, especially if the first was a girl. Ethnic minorities also had different rules, and enforcement was not always strict. Because of these exceptions, the population continued to grow. While growth did slow down, it didn't stop. By the time the one-child policy was replaced with a 2-child policy in 2016, and then a 3-child policy in 2021, China's population had already passed 1.4 billion. Number 2. Urban expansion and migration. As cities in China expanded, they offered more jobs, better health care, and improved living conditions. Millions of people moved from the countryside to cities, starting new lives and building families. Urban life also came with new opportunities for education and income. While urban living often leads to smaller families over time, China's migration patterns help spread population growth across the country. Massive cities like Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou grew rapidly, becoming megacities that now host tens of millions of people each. Number 1. Sheer momentum of numbers. The number 1 reason China remains the most populous country is simple. Once a population reaches a certain size, it has momentum. Even with lower birth rates today, the existing number of people still leads to millions of new births each year. When over 1 billion people live in one place, even a small birth rate means huge yearly increases. This momentum is powerful, but it's also starting to slow. In recent years, China's birth rate has fallen. The country's population actually dropped slightly for the first time in decades in 2022, but because of its massive base, it will take time for any significant decrease to happen. That's why, as of 2023, China still holds the title of the most populous country in the world. So there you have it. 10 major reasons why China has stayed at the top of the global population chart for so long. From geography and agriculture to culture and history, every factor played a role in shaping this reality. While India is set to overtake China very soon if it hasn't already, the story of China's population is one of the most fascinating examples of how land, leadership, and culture can come together to shape the destiny of a nation. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new today, hit the like button, share this video with someone curious about world facts, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos just like this one. We've got more global stories, amazing statistics, and surprising facts coming your way, so stay tuned.